World War II is often remembered as a clash of armies, nations, and ideologies. A war of tanks, planes, and soldiers fighting across continents. But behind the well-known battles and famous leaders lies a hidden world of secrets that many history books barely mention. These secrets were buried under layers of propaganda, classified files, and deliberate silence. Even decades later, when historians dig deeper, they still uncover facts that completely change how we understand the war. Some of these truths are shocking, some are disturbing, and some reveal just how close humanity came to outcomes far more terrifying than we ever imagined. One of the most unsettling secrets of World War II is how close Nazi Germany came to developing an atomic bomb. Popular history often presents the Allies as the only side capable of such advanced science, but the truth is far more complex. German scientists were among the best in the world, including Nobel Prize winners who understood nuclear physics long before the war. Secret facilities were built deep underground, hidden from Allied bombers, where experiments with uranium enrichment quietly took place, while Germany ultimately failed due to internal disagreements, lack of resources, and strategic mistakes. Historians now believe that if the war had lasted just a bit longer, the balance of power could have changed in terrifying ways. The idea that Hitler might have possessed a nuclear weapon still sends chills through historians today. Another hidden truth is the massive role deception played in Allied victory. Many people know about famous operations, but few realize the sheer scale of lies that were carefully constructed. Entire fake armies were created using inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and false radio transmissions. Double agents fed carefully crafted misinformation to the enemy, making them believe invasions would happen in places that were never actually targeted. Some German generals trusted these false reports so completely that they ignored real intelligence. Historians now say that without these elaborate deceptions, some of the most important Allied victories might never have happened. One of the darkest secrets of the war involves experiments conducted on human beings. While Nazi medical crimes are well known, what is less discussed is how much information from those experiments was quietly studied after the war. Some Allied scientists examined data obtained through horrific means, debating whether knowledge gained through suffering should ever be used. This moral dilemma remains one of the most uncomfortable legacies of World War II. The fact that progress in medicine may have indirectly benefited from such cruelty still troubles historians and ethicists alike. Another shocking revelation is how close Britain came to defeat in the early years of the war. The image of an unshakable nation standing strong hides a reality filled with fear, shortages, and desperation. Secret government documents reveal plans that were made in case of a German invasion, including evacuation of leaders and the destruction of key infrastructure to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. Food shortages were so severe that malnutrition became a real concern. Historians now agree that morale, not military strength alone, kept Britain from collapsing during its darkest hours. One of the most surprising secrets is how much the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany cooperated before turning into bitter enemies. Before their dramatic clash, they shared intelligence, resources, and even military training. German officers trained on Soviet soil, and economic agreements allowed vital materials to flow between the two future enemies. This uneasy partnership helped both sides prepare for war, making their later conflict even more devastating. Many people still struggle to accept that these two ideologically opposed regimes once worked together so closely. Another little-known fact is the role of women in covert operations. Beyond factories and hospitals, thousands of women served as spies, saboteurs, and resistance fighters. Some parachuted behind enemy lines, carrying hidden radios and coded messages. Others lived double lives for years, pretending to support enemy forces while secretly undermining them. Many of these women were captured and executed, their stories erased or forgotten for decades. Only recently have historians begun to fully acknowledge their bravery and sacrifice. A particularly haunting secret involves how often luck, not strategy, determines survival. Pilots return from missions with bullet-riddled planes, only to discover that a few inches difference could have meant instant death. Entire cities were spared or destroyed based on weather changes, navigation errors, or delayed orders. Historians studying battle records now realize how fragile every decision was, and how history could have changed dramatically due to random chance. The war was not just a test of power, but a reminder of how unpredictable fate can be. Another truth that shocks many people is how much censorship shaped public understanding of the war. Governments on all sides carefully controlled what citizens saw, heard, and read. Defeats were disguised as victories, and civilian suffering was minimized or hidden entirely. Even photographs were edited or staged to maintain morale. Historians now spend years separating reality from propaganda, uncovering just how manipulated public perception truly was during those years. One of the most controversial secrets involved scientists and engineers recruited after the war. Instead of being punished, some individuals who had worked for brutal regimes were quietly brought into allied countries to share their knowledge. This information helped fuel advancements in rocketry, aviation, and space exploration. While these contributions shaped the modern world, the moral cost remains deeply troubling. Historians still debate whether progress justified the decision to overlook past crimes. Perhaps the most chilling secret of all is how close the world came to even greater destruction. Plans existed for chemical warfare on an unimaginable scale. Stockpiles of deadly gases were prepared, and retaliatory strikes were considered if certain lines were crossed. The fact that these weapons were never used is often credited to fear of mutual destruction rather than moral restraint. This realization forces historians to confront how thin the line was between survival and catastrophe. When we look back at World War II, it is tempting to see it as a clear story of heroes and villains, victories and defeats. But the untold secrets reveal a far more complex reality. The war was shaped by hidden decisions, secret alliances, moral compromises, and sheer chance. It was a time when humanity stood on the edge, guided not only by courage and strategy, but also by fear, deception, and uncertainty. These revelations do not diminish the sacrifices made by millions. Instead, they deepen our understanding of just how fragile the world was, and how easily history could have taken a darker path, even today. As new documents are uncovered and old witnesses finally speak, World War II continues to surprise historians. The past is not fixed. It evolves as we learn more. And perhaps the most important lesson from these untold secrets is this: history is never as simple as it seems. Behind every victory lies a shadow. Behind every decision, a hidden cost. Remembering these truths is not just about understanding the past, but about recognizing the responsibility we carry to prevent such devastation from ever happening again. As historians continue to study World War II, one of the most unsettling realizations is how many decisions were made in secrecy by just a handful of people. Decisions that affected millions of lives. In smoke-filled rooms, far from battlefields, leaders approved actions that entire populations would never learn about until decades later. Some orders were deliberately kept vague, allowing commanders to interpret them in ways that suited immediate needs, often at a terrible human cost. This culture of secrecy made the war not just a conflict of armies, but a struggle of hidden power and silent authority. Another deeply shocking secret involves the psychological warfare used on both soldiers and civilians. Governments understood that fear could be as powerful as bombs. Fake radio broadcasts were transmitted to enemy troops, spreading rumors about betrayal, shortages, or unstoppable advances. Leaflets were dropped from planes, written in perfect enemy language, designed to break morale rather than inform. Even civilians were not spared. Carefully crafted messages were released to create panic or false hope. Historians now believe that these invisible battles of this mind may have shortened the war just as much as physical combat. There is also the rarely discussed truth about how many soldiers were sent into battle knowing they would likely not return. In desperate moments, commanders calculated losses in cold numbers, deciding that sacrificing entire units could buy time or distract the enemy. These were not accidents of war, but deliberate choices made under extreme pressure. Letters recovered years later revealed that some officers were haunted by these decisions for the rest of their lives. The idea that victory sometimes depended on knowingly sending men to their deaths remains one of the most painful secrets historians grapple with. Another hidden aspect of the war is how deeply divided societies were behind the front lines. While propaganda showed unity, the reality was far more complicated. Resistance movements clashed with collaborators, neighbors informed on neighbors, and long-standing friendships were destroyed by suspicion. In occupied territories, survival often meant making impossible moral choices. Some people cooperated just enough to protect their families, while others resisted and paid with their lives. Historians now recognize that the line between hero and traitor was often blurred by circumstances beyond individual control. Of the most surprising discoveries made by modern researchers is how much environmental damage World War II caused, damage that lasted for generations. Forests were burned, rivers were polluted with fuel and chemicals, and unexploded bombs remained buried beneath fields and cities. In some regions, farming land was unusable for decades. Even today, construction projects in Europe occasionally uncover live ammunition from the war. This silent legacy reminds historians that the consequences of war do not end when the fighting stops. Another secret that challenges popular narratives is how often communication failures changed the course of events. Messages were delayed, misunderstood, or never delivered at all. A single broken radio or misread map could result in thousands of casualties. There are documented cases where ceasefire orders arrived hours too late, long after lives had already been lost. Historians studying these moments now understand that war is not only fought with weapons, but with fragile systems that can collapse under pressure. The treatment of prisoners of war also hides uncomfortable truths. While international laws existed, they were frequently ignored when resources were scarce or revenge took over. Conditions varied wildly depending on location, leadership, and circumstance. Some camps were run with a sense of duty and restraint, while others became places of unimaginable suffering. What shocks historians is how inconsistent humanity was, even within the same nation or army. Survival often depended more on luck than on law. Asterisk. One of the most emotionally powerful secrets involves the children of World War II. Millions grew up surrounded by destruction, loss, and fear. Some were forced into labor, others into military roles far beyond their years. Many were separated from their families and never reunited. After the war, these children carried invisible wounds into adulthood. Historians only began seriously studying their experiences decades later, realizing that the war shaped not just a generation, but the emotional foundation of entire societies. Another rarely discussed truth is how close certain battles came to ending very differently. Small decisions, unexpected resistance, or sudden reinforcements often changed outcomes at the last moment. Historians analyzing these events now suggest that history hinged on minutes, not years. A delayed order, a wrong turn, or a moment of hesitation could have altered borders, governments, and the future of nations. This realization makes World War II feel less like an unstoppable force and more, like a fragile chain of events balanced on chance. The economic side of the war also hides powerful secrets. Entire industries were transformed almost overnight, producing weapons instead of consumer goods. Profits soared for some companies, while ordinary citizens struggled to survive. Black markets thrived, and corruption quietly grew in the shadows of patriotism. After the war, many of these economic stories were buried to preserve national pride. Historians now argue that understanding these financial dynamics is essential to understanding how wars truly function. Perhaps one of the most disturbing revelations is how quickly the world tried to forget. After victory was declared, nations rushed to rebuild and move on. Painful truths were pushed aside, and uncomfortable questions were left unanswered. Survivors were often expected to stay silent, to be grateful rather than broken. It took decades for many voices to be heard. Historians now see this silence as another hidden cost of the war, one that delayed healing and understanding. As more archives are opened and more testimonies recorded, it becomes clear that World War II was not just a battle between nations, but a test of humanity itself. Courage existed alongside cruelty, sacrifice alongside selfishness. For every act of heroism, there was a story of loss. For every victory, a shadow of regret. These untold secrets remind us that history is not made by symbols and slogans, but by real people making impossible choices in extraordinary circumstances. In the end, the most shocking truth may be that World War II never truly ended. Its echoes live on in borders, alliances, technologies, and memories. The secrets uncovered by historians do not weaken the importance of remembering the war. They strengthen it. They force us to confront uncomfortable realities and challenge simple narratives. By understanding these hidden stories, we honor not just the triumphs, but the suffering, the complexity, and the humanity that defined one of the darkest chapters in human history.